Hello and welcome to Prominent Culture Center. This is Culture Corner. We bring you the authentic stories of creative individuals. Today with us, Chaitali B. Roy, culture journalist, broadcaster, and writer. Chaitali, welcome to Culture Corner.
Thank you very much, Cassini. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
We're very happy to have you. And we were just talking prior to taping how we've actually met in this very room for the same
right.
purpose.
You were on the other side, right?
Yes,
I was
yes.
on the other side. So
and there were yes. And so I was very happy that you said yes to our podcast because there is so much to share. Usually you are the one sharing the stories of others, the great stories of different individuals, but your story is equally interesting and exciting. And I hope we get to cover a lot of it today.
I'm looking forward to that, yeah.
I'd like us to delve into the unique occupation you hold. I remember coming to Kuwait a bit over 9 years ago, asking about culture journalist, and your name came up immediately. And I must say it was almost just your name coming from everyone. How did you find yourself being a culture journalist in Kuwait or in life in general?
I mean, I've always been interested in people. That's something that I was a radio broadcaster in India, and as a broadcaster, as a person who conceives shows, I found interesting meeting people, getting to know their stories. Very, very interesting. So when I arrived here in Kuwait, and it was a very, very different time then.
When was that?
Oh, donkeys, yes. It was like 2001, just after 9/11. And I land up here and I had no idea what I was going to do because I came with the idea that, well, I have experience in radio broadcasting and they are going to welcome me with open arms. And here I come and there is not a single radio, in private radio station. There was just one, which is 99.7. And there were no expats there. They were not taking any expats in the English department. However, I was lucky, and I persisted. And I'm very, very thankful to Sheikha Shijun al-Sabah, who's the director of the Foreign Service here, that she gave me a chance then. And I started working for radio. And at that point of time, I said, I have time in hand. So what do? I want to do something more. And I met my other mentor, Mr. Yaver Maqsood, who was the local editor at Arab Times. And he told me when I met him, I said, I want to do something different. I want to join as a reporter. And he said that I would advise you against it, Chaitali. He spent some time with me and he said, you're interested in people, you are a storyteller. Why don't you start telling stories and build a brand for yourself? Because if you're a reporter, you will be asked to cover all and sundry, There's a jewelry store opening, there's something happening, you have to go and cover it. Don't do that. Build an image for yourself, build a brand for yourself. And I took that to heart, frankly. And that's what I worked on. I remember the first article I wrote was on Nargila, the Hubly Bubbly, because I was exposed to it. I was a Palestinian friend of mine took me one day to a shisha parlor, and I found it fascinating. Coming from India, I'd never seen anything like that. We do have similar things in India, but we do it at home, and it's only in very, very traditional homes in the north of India. It's not like this collective, where people sit and they are just smoking shisha. So I wrote about that. That was my first article, and just used to go into a shop and just start talking. I was an Indian, firstly. And they have never seen an Indian do that, And I was a woman. And so therefore I was like doing, what should I say, maybe stretching the envelope a bit, So it was great fun, Cassini. I will not change it for anything in the world.
Were the stories finding you or were you pursuing them?
Both, actually. Both, yeah. Because I think I started sniffing around, basically. I would try to find a story in every person I met, in every situation that I found myself in, and the stories found me as well. And I think there have been some very, very interesting instances. I was trying to think back, you shared some of the questions with me, and I realized that it's been so long. 2001 to 2024. I have, but then there are people like Claudia Farkas al-Rashid, who I consider my guru and mentor, who's been writing for a very, very long time. But Claudia, I think, gave a break for some time because she was looking after her family. I didn't give a break. So therefore, it becomes so difficult, and age, I suppose, also takes, it has takes a toll. It takes a toll. So there are certain things which are getting lost now. So yeah,
A lot of them you've written for Arab Times.
all of them.
All of them?
All of them. All of them for Arab Times only.
Are they possibly a material for publication?
Oh, yes, 100%. I mean, I think there are so many books hidden there. But the problem is that I don't have the time.
Books take time.
Books take time, and they need
also
so much.
take a toll on you.
They take a toll. They need focus. And I mean, this is, of course, my passion, but this is also work. So finding a balance between the commercial side of it and the creative side of it, that I think is an eternal, like a juggle, an eternal quest, yeah.
Can we go a little bit back? We like to talk here on podcast about childhoods of our guests, and just look into whether Chaitali saw herself as a little girl as a writer and a journalist.
No, but I knew that I would be doing something which is creative, 100%, because as a child I was exposed. My world was made up of books. I remember one of the first gifts my mother gave me was a set of Enid Blytons, and I still have them. And oh my God, Ksenia, the joy they gave me, which is something that I try to tell young people today, And then it happened, it just followed, books after books. And India is a multilingual country. And I grew up in a part of India. I'm Indian first, and then I'm a Bengali from Calcutta, which is in the eastern part of India. I grew up in another part of India, in North India, which speaks Hindi. So I learned Hindi along with English. And then my mother, we came back to my hometown, and I wanted to learn my language. But by that time I was like, I think 10. So I taught myself the language through newspapers and by reading books. I didn't have a teacher, I taught myself the language. And the wonderful world they opened to me. So I was into books. I was into theater. I did a lot of theater right up to university. I did music. So I was exposed. There was so much of culture, and I did literature. All of it kind of came together. I knew that I would be joining communication or advertising or media, do something which is creative.
You studied then something in these fields?
Oh, yes. I studied literature. I did my master's in that. And then I did my postgraduate diploma in public relations and journalism. I did another post-graduation in marketing management and brand image building. So that's my academic background.
And you basically use all of it today.
Yes, I do.
Given the number of careers you're handling. Can we go back to when you first came to Kuwait, and this was your first time in the Middle East?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So something would be lovely to share, something about the Kuwait of those days and how you felt in a different culture coming for the first time. You came as a young woman.
Very young, yes. And I had a 4-year-old son. And I remember that, when I came here, the landscape the topography was very different.
Even 9 years ago when
I came. Right? Yeah, yeah. It's changed so much since then. It was, but one thing about Kuwait was I felt then people were simpler in the sense that, what should I say, life was slow. But there was one, and I never felt, and this is something that I say in Sadaaqa, the show that I do, I never felt out of place because there were so many similarities that I found between my culture and Kuwaiti culture, especially with family being the very, the foundation of the society. That is something that I recognized very, very early. And there were so many similarities that I really didn't feel that cultural shock. No, I didn't feel that. But in those days, remember, there was no Google. There was no internet as such. I mean, and sometimes when I talk to some young people, they say, rude people did really exist, when there was no Google and no internet. I said, well, that's the way it was.
How did you live, my children asked?
right.
It's a mystery.
Yes, but it was a wonderful time, wasn't it?
It was. I tell them I was able to find all the information you now look
Yeah.
for in school,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
books,
In
in
books. In
encyclopedias.
books.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
It was actually possible. And the cultural scene at the time, what was it like or how did it develop? How do you see it differently than today?
The cultural scene was very vibrant, interestingly, because I felt, because there were certain organizations, certain groups of people that I worked on a continuous basis as a journalist. And I felt that there was more representation of people coming from outside then, and people willing to also accept these new cultures, then. And for example, and you have worked with Sadhu House, I know, previously. But so there is this organization, which is Kuwait Textile Arts Organization. So I started covering their events in 2002. And I continuously covered them for more than 10 years. So every meeting was a learning, in the sense that and this was the same, whether it was the British Ladies Society, though they were British, mainly British, but there was something going on. It was just not a social affair. It was just not coffee and tea and mindless talk. There was content there. And there were people who were delivering the content. So they were talking about the experiences, talking about textiles, talking about cultures. It was so vibrant. But in my field of work, I didn't find too many women then. And even now, I don't find too many women, even now. I don't know what is the reason for that. I know that the Arabic media they have women, women journalists who are working. But as far as English media is concerned, I didn't find too many women working on the field. No.
How do you stay relevant in the field? Is it choosing the top stories? Do you even have to stay relevant? What is the situation in this field?
You have to stay relevant because we are talking about challenges that women face in the work field. And I have felt it. The challenges are, what should I say, in the sense that there are detractors who are sometimes unable to accept that a woman who has no connections, no vasta, and who all she has is the courage and the energy, and she's hardworking, and yet she's being able to do good work, and somehow they are not able to take this. So you have to constantly reinvent yourself to be on top of your game. Sometimes you're unable to do that. Sometimes you fall back, but the struggle is always there.
What are some of the most interesting stories you'd be able to share with us, whether they were very challenging or they were just very fulfilling or something that opened a new world for you?
What I love most about my work, and I think that's what keeps me going, is that I learn from each experience. Every person that I meet, every article that I have written has taught me something. I think media is a very tough field here in Kuwait, because in media, and I've shared this with in symposiums and in other interviews as well, that it is not easy to economically survive, because it's not like other places in the Middle East. It's not like Abu Dhabi. It's not like Dubai. So I have friends in media who are like doing multiple jobs, right? So that's one thing, that's the struggle. But at the same time, the fulfillment comes from doing the kind of work that you do. So there's one particular story. There are lots of stories. There's some stories that I've done online. I haven't met the person, but I've done three or four stories on women in Afghanistan, and it was fascinating. There's one particular woman that I featured called Zargona Hussain, who used to run a radio station in Afghanistan, and she did it under the Taliban's nose. Now, I still have to find out what is happening with Zargona now. I haven't found out. Then, so there were like Heb and Zania. Heb and Zania are from northwestern frontier province of Pakistan, where music is, and especially women singing and these were like westernized women, singing, performing. And and they were, I did a wonderful interview with them that stayed with me. Darla Thar, oh my God. I mean, I've like worked for Darla Thar I've covered them for 15 years. Every lecture, every musical event, every what should I say, every conference is like enlightening, it's like, but there's one particular, there are two I remember. I mean, there are quite a few more, but as I said, it's a long time.
Yes.
You tend to forget. I took some time today to sit back and think.
Yes.
And I was thinking, I need to put this down somewhere because I'm going to forget this later.
We have now recorded what you've
Yeah,
just said,
thank you
that
very
you
much.
will do it.
There's one particular article which is I did on Bin Hussein Band. So there is a form of music in Kuwait which is folkloric, which is based on sea bands, and the sea music, the sea bands of Kuwait are getting lost, and I was doing a series on them. And so I wanted to go to a Bin Hussein band performance. And one of the members of the Bin Hussein told me that, Chaitali, when we have a function, we will invite you. So I get this call on a weekday. Chaitali, we have a uns, I think he said, urs. Urs. We have a urs. I said, what's that? He said, it's a celebration. One of our members got married and we are having a celebration. Please come and cover that. All our members will be there. You can even talk to a lot of people. Kisini, I landed up. I called my editor. I said, I am going for this one. He said, okay. And I land up. It's a courtyard, old courtyard house. And there were about 250 men dancing and singing. And I was the only female. And my cameraman he went separately, and he was there as well. And so, they had this wonderful performance, and I spent the evening with them. And then they said, I have to stay back for dinner. I said, well, I wasn't expecting this. They said, no, you have to stay back for dinner. So we stayed back, and they, like, in this courtyard, they put plastic, like a plastic table on the floor. And they threw like laban and dates, after us. They were putting gaps, and they were like, and then what should I say, the servers brought in majboos, lehem, with meat, and each one was a platter, and each platter was going to be shared by like 6 men. And I was feeling a little awkward there because I'm not used to eating from the same platter. So I was a little hesitant. And then one of the old ones, he turned towards me and he said, I'll get you a separate plate. And I remember the kindness, Yes. He got me a separate plate, and I sat with these 250 men, the
Such
only
a unique
woman.
occasion.
I'm telling you, I mean, it was like surreal, when I think back. And I don't think a lot of women from India would have had an experience like that, So that was a fantastic experience that I really cherish.
Thank you for sharing that. Now that you've mentioned that, and Sadhu House, you do write a lot, or you wrote a lot about these crafts that need safeguarding, and that whose artisans and master weavers are slowly leaving us. You've covered Sadhu House weavers,
yes,
in the past. Can you share with us some of these stories, maybe? I remember vividly, because I spent some time there, like we've said, that there was this lovely weaver, Turki.
I was going to mention Turkey,
Yes.
but my I think my memories are now a little faded. I mean, I was so fortunate to have met her, and she was so kind and so gentle. She was an award-winning. Did you meet her?
Yes, I loved how she loved media.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
when we would be taking photos of her in-house, or we had some journalists over, or there would be a story, she would be featured. She made sure that her famous ring was also
Yes.
on camera.
Yeah.
And that ring I saw, and I have that pin, was made into a pin that you can now buy in Sadhu House. And there's a story of her on the back of a package, which I think is just beautiful. I'm not sure if she's still with us.
No, I don't think so. I
Yes,
think
but
she's
a number of years ago, while I was still there, we had the pleasure of seeing her quite often.
That's right. And I think she, as I said, my memory is fading a little because it's been so long, and I've worked very closely with Sadhu House, and I remember Sheikh Altaf telling me that we should publish a book of your articles on Sadhu weaving. But yes,
there's another project
that's
in the
another
making. Yes,
that is another project.
I asked that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
tell
please
me.
do.
No,
I asked that because I wanted us to. I know that Sheikh Altaf is featured in your book,
that's right.
Women of Kuwait,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
wanted us to slowly ask you, for me to ask you a few questions about the book and about the research on
Yeah,
the
of course,
book.
yes.
Yes. So every book is a grand project. It takes a lot from us. It gives a lot to the public. How did you come up with the topic that you wanted to cover some prominent women of Kuwait?
When I came to Kuwait, I was like a lot of other people from outside from outside this part of the world. I had my prejudices, and I had my stereotypes that I came with, and I thought these women were like shackled and they led a very sheltered life. And when I came here, and my editor, he told me that I want you to do a series on Kuwaiti women, and this was, I think, around 2003. And I started searching out women, and then I realized I don't have to search them out because there are so many of them, and with such incredible stories, of resilience, of achievement, and I started writing. And after I finished the series, I started writing. I started doing the same for radio. My show was called The Kuwaitia, and I think it ran for 2 years. And all these women were featured on that show as well. And so that's when I felt that if only I had a chance to capture their stories, because a lot of people are unaware of, that's one thing that I find, and it pains me, frankly. A lot of young Kuwaitis are unaware of their own history and heritage. I'm just not talking about the women. I'm talking about their immediate history and heritage. They know that there was an invasion which took place, but they don't know exactly where they came from, what was the history, though I know they do Kuwait social studies, but no, they don't have information. And I think it is so important for young people. And I say this because I grew up with a great sense of history. I'm so rooted to my culture, to my country, because my education exposed me to my countries. And India is well, it's so rich in its history and heritage, and I'm so proud of it. And so I felt that the story of these women are going to get lost. And it just happened that I was on the board of management of a very, very well-known school in Kuwait. And one of the board members came from Delhi. And we were having lunch, and there were a group of women wearing full abayas who passed by. And he passed a comment which I did not like. And I called him out. I said, you have no right to talk like that. Just because they are in abayas doesn't mean that, And he said, really? I said, you think you can make your point? You think you can convince me? So I said, yes, I think I can. So then I sent him, I emailed him my article on Sarah Akbar. And when he received it, he read it, and he got back to me. He said, Chaitali, this is fantastic. This is a great story. And I think you need to share it with the world. And I said, I would love to, but I don't know how to do it. He said, I'm a publisher. Didn't you know that? I will publish the book for you. So, and that's how Women of Kuwait Turning Tides began. And I'm so grateful to him. He's no longer here. And for the support and for the encouragement and for his mentoring.
Did you ever think of maybe publishing another book on the same topic?
Oh,
there
yes.
are so many.
I know. You know what happened is after the book was released at the Kuwait National Library in 2016, I was asked whether I would be doing my next book going to be on Kuwaiti men? And I said, I'm so sorry. I really don't find that subject interesting. And I remember people having a good laugh over that. But my second book, and the title of the book was chosen by the former British ambassador to Kuwait, Michael Davenport. And it is Daughters of Kuwait. And I have been struggling with it. I've been struggling since...
So it's in the works.
It's in the works. It's like, it's all it's all there. The interviews are all done, but I am not finding the time. Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure you will.
I hope so, Ksenia. I'm keeping my fingers, toes, and everything crossed.
This has to happen, surely. I've mentioned you have many careers. And like we said in the beginning, you are a broadcaster. You've mentioned your work in the radio. Can we go back to that? Your work here at Kuwait Radio, your podcasts. There are so many. I'd like us to mention them all.
As I told you, I started with the radio broadcasting in India, and it was quite a wonderful time because private broadcasting was new then, FM broadcasting, and I was the only woman in the group, and I don't know why, and I was the youngest because women in India have far more. I mean, they're more exposed, to different careers like this. But I was at that point of time, as far as the management is concerned, the only female and the youngest in the team. And then when I came here, I joined radio. But for a long time, I worked in the production side of it for whatever reasons. I tried to get my own show, but it took me. It was a journey of 15 years. Right. And then I got my own show, which is the guest show. And I'm very grateful to Sheikha Shijun al-Sabah and Shijun Mashood for that. And there we featured stories of people like you, interesting people who make Kuwait such a wonderful place. And I enjoyed each and every episode. It went on for 3 years. And then it was decided that, that was a lot of talk, It was like every week. And we decided to give a break. And we started something which has not been done before in Kuwait, which is Hindi radio. And I was asked to join that. And so I'm doing Hindi radio now. So,
what does that look like? What is it? The proper news being broadcasted in Hindi?
Yes.
Is it daily?
No, it's not daily at present. It is just one slot, Sunday. But we are hoping that it will increase. And it is a live program, but it is not a chat show. It's like Bollywood is huge. So it's a mix. It's like a magazine program. It has a little bit of news and it has some India-Kuwait, because since it's Hindi, it's India-Kuwait relationship. And then it has a lot of Bollywood spices, music and stuff like that.
You work on it with a team?
Yeah, I have. There is in the Ministry of Information people who speak in Hindi, and we are all working together on that.
You have maybe correspondence from India. How does that look like at the moment?
Not at present, but we are hoping that we will reach a stage where we will have correspondence from India.
There is quite a number of Hindi speakers.
Yeah, we are 1 million here, yes. So quite a number of Hindi speakers. And that's the reason why...
I'm sure this was welcomed.
Yeah, it was welcome. But we do need to do more with the show, let's put it that way. We started in April, I think. And we in January, we will kind of come back in a new avatar, Yeah.
You said that the guest show has had its course, and there are other things you're doing now.
Oh yes, so when the guest show stopped and I couldn't do my, I couldn't feature people like you, as I said, who make up this melting pot. I mean, the Hindi show is good, but the Hindi show is only limited to Hindi-speaking people. But I wanted to continue that journey of the guest show, but in a slightly different way. So I started a podcast called Thursday Kashta, and that's like a monthly podcast. And we are hoping to take it a little beyond monthly, maybe do it more often next year, and. From January, I'm going to start something called Beyond Borders. So that's for people who come here to Kuwait, who visit Kuwait, and who are important people, who are people of repute, and who come here maybe for a conference, maybe for a concert, and we feature them on Beyond Borders. So that's another podcast in the offing, let's put it that way. Yeah.
And I was wondering about Sadaaqa, because it is... I've watched episodes and it's so interesting. First of all, it's great that it is in English so we can follow. And then you're featuring this long-standing, beautiful relationship between Kuwait and India.
That's right.
How do you find your speakers, your guests?
How do I find
them?
I think the long years of experience that I have in Kuwait, because I
And how do you
think
choose them?
so. I choose them on the basis of their contribution to Kuwaiti economy and Kuwaiti society. I mean, 1 million people here. So, they have to be the top notch, the people, the cream, who have their own businesses, professionals who have made a difference. So, and as I said, being a journalist, and I'm a people's person, I'm always out, my nose is on the ground, I'm like sniffing all the time. so
Yeah.
that helps.
Yeah.
And it's actually been that is something that I'd wanted to do again for a long time, but I didn't have the necessary wherewithals. And I got that later on. So yeah, it's a journey which I started with the business people. And now slowly this is the third season, I'm going into professionals. And I don't know where it will take me after this. I need to see. I'm still not
The
decided.
stories are so interesting. A lot of people are sharing their emotional
That's right.
relations. A lot of people have a grandfather who went to school somewhere in India or grew up there or had and these are, I think, a beautiful additions to whatever their current work is. A lot of people who have helped develop Kuwait into what Kuwait is today.
For example, take Tony Jashanwal. Who doesn't know Jashanwal in Kuwait? I was joking with Tony one day. I said, I thought you were Kuwaiti. And he was laughing. I said, when I first came to Kuwait and I saw Jashanwals, and I had not been exposed to that surname before. So, and people talked about them as if they were Kuwaitis. And then when I became wiser, let's put it that way, I realized he's Indian. And when I got him on my show, I realized that his family migrated to this part of the world right after the First World War, which is quite a pretty long time. And his uncles, who are in Bahrain and in Dubai, if you see them, you can't make out that they are Indians. They are all in dish dashes and, all with in the local attire. And they prefer to be like that because they want to be one with the community. And so it's such an interesting story, really, and there are people. Tony Jashanwal's is a unique story, but there are so many. There's one, I don't know whether you've heard of Al Malam Tires, for example. It's one of the biggest automotive parts companies in Kuwait. And that story started with a 16, 17-year-old who came to Kuwait to work in a garage. And then he set up his own company. He was a tire picker. He used to do everything. And then from there, he moved to this, Stories are so inspiring,
If I remember well, you had another show at a Kuwaiti table.
Oh, yes. How could I forget, at my Kuwaiti table? That was my first podcast. That was my first experience of podcast. So,
but what an interesting concept.
Yes, it
Please
was.
share with us.
So it was the British ambassador's wife who had just read my book. And she said, her name was Lavinia Davenport. And she said, Chaitali, we met for coffee. She said, we have to do something. And she was like full of energy. Lavinia lights up a room, when she enters a room. And at that point of time, we had Krisha Durecki, who was the Australian ambassador's wife, and she was a media professional. She was a broadcaster herself from the BBC, and she had given up all of that to be a diplomat's wife. And so she was going to produce the show, and Lavinia and I were going to host it. At my Kuwaiti table was centered on Kuwaiti women, and so each broadcast featured a special woman an achiever who would bring a dish with her. And then we would start around that dish and we would talk about it. And then we would go back to her childhood. And again, storytelling, right? Fascinating. Absolutely. I was so bereft when we stopped that because they were leaving, but yeah. So but that's something I'll really cherish, that experience.
It's really interesting how, Kuwait is such a small place where people meet, because I knew Michael Davenport from Serbia when
really?
he was,
Oh, yes, of course, he was in Serbia.
Speaks Serbian.
Yes.
Because he was, and he has a dog whom he adopted there in one small town. I believe this dog is still with
He's
them, the
still,
lab.
yes,
Yes.
and they wouldn't leave Kuwait without him. So
Yes.
they stayed back, and only when, because that was COVID time, and animals were not being allowed out, and that's when they
I think we
traveled.
came at the same time, him and I, to Kuwait.
Yes, I
And that
think
was
so.
so interesting. He was the British ambassador to Serbia, and then he was head of EU delegation for a number
That's
of years.
right.
So I think at least 7 or 8 years they spent there.
Yeah.
They would always ask me things about Belgrade, where they were situated, and you can tell the deep love they had for the
Absolutely.
country.
And Lavinia, I think, made 2 documentaries. Lavinia was what should I say? She was a person of many interest. So she has her own YouTube channel, and she was so full of laughter and warmth and humor. And she would like make something simple, like making an omelette, into like something hilarious, you know. I miss her a lot.
A great privilege to know such people.
A great privilege, yes.
They went back to the neighborhood. I
Yeah,
think
they
they're
did.
still in Kosovo at the
Kosovo,
moment.
I think they're
Yes.
just moving in the
Yeah.
process, I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, lovely to remember them as well. So all of these things that you're doing require a lot of creativity and creating things from scratch. That is one of the hardest things to do on earth, creating, just creatively, being creatively active. How do you manage to do it day by day by day? Where do you find your creativity? How do you get inspired? And most importantly, how do you rest?
I really don't know how to answer this question, you know, because I can't rest. But that is something which someone told me is very wrong. This was Sheikha Jial Sabab Daratma, who is into yoga, and she said one of the most difficult things to do is to be quiet with yourself. And it's not that I find difficult to do that, but I don't want to do that. I don't know what's the reason for it. Am I running away from something? I don't know. But it's the creativity that you were talking about. Yes, you're right. But I've never delved into it. It's like a well inside me, you know. And it's that what my work keeps me going. It's my work which in a way, what should I say? I mean, that's my family is very, very, very important to me, but my work is, I suppose, equally important to me, and without it I am nothing, frankly. So perhaps that, I mean, even when I think of I cannot think of retirement, Ksenia. There is a time when we all have to go back home, right? And I think my retirement plan involves work, you know. So I really don't have an answer to that. I haven't thought about it. What is the fountain, or where is the well from which it springs? I don't have an answer to that. You have me stumped.
It's a good thing to ask, because I remember from my cultural studies when I was a student, and I did not understand it well then, because when you're 20 you can do everything at any time. But I remember learning that only in that time when we rest, and the rest is divided actually in a few different types of rest. There's leisure time, there's active rest, there's doing absolutely nothing. There's something that Italians have nicely called dolce far niente. So it is the time when we actually gain our strength back to be creative again. But I think you are already bursting with so much creativity. That, and also, I think another thing that I know from working in culture, we find a lot of moments where we actually recuperate is when we share with others.
I think so. I agree with you on that.
In cultural content. For instance, many times I've said on this show that this has saved my life in this past year. That just seeing people listening to their stories, being able to provide a space for great stories to be shared is something that fulfills us.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as I said earlier, that each experience is a learning experience for me. And I think that need to learn and need to understand is so deeply rooted inside me that it just keeps me going. The need to know more. Now, where does that end? I really don't know. But every time, even this experience has taught me something, you know. So that's what I'm saying, that maybe it is that, and it is that which keeps me going. Yeah.
I think that in your work, you've many times been an activist. even though maybe you haven't called yourself that, writing about women, making sure their stories are heard, writing about potentially minorities and issues some women have faced in their line of work. How do you juggle your roles? You've said that your family is very important to you, as is your job, but you obviously had a lot of support within your family to do what you do.
Oh, yes. I mean, from the very beginning, my mother was a huge support. And I miss her even as we speak. She's no longer in this world. And from the very beginning of my career, it was my mother-in-law, the two very, very important women in my life. But shall I just say something that I feel that working women, it's not, what should I say? It's not easy to find a balance. I think very, very few people can put their hands on their heart and say, I found balance. Perhaps men find balance, I don't know. But women, because we are so many things to so many people, we are, of course, men are as well, but I think we are more emotionally engaged, let's put it that way. It is, you will be doing wrong. You will not be doing your 100% for at least one person in the family, whether it's your husband, whether it's your daughter, a son, or your parents, brother. So that's a guilt, which I think that's what's happened to me. That's a guilt which I have to live with. I mean, if I have not been able to attend a parent-teachers meeting of my daughter, or perhaps she has a dance recital that I haven't been able to attend, or my son is into something which I have not been able to do. So that is something which I have to live with, Ksenia. But I really think that balance is something which is like it's an utopia. It's utopian in its concept, finding balance.
I think it is safe to say we don't get to balance.
No, we don't get to balance. No, I don't, at least.
We just get to do the best we can each day. And on some days we do better, on some days not so much. But I think that's also very fine.
Yeah.
I'm
trying to accept that now,
I'm not worried with that any longer.
I used to be worried a lot. I said, till my last day, I think one thing which would be constant in me is guilt, because I'm like overridden by guilt.
But I think we also potentially come from the cultures that kind of have embedded this in us.
Women are expected to cook. Women are expected to look after their families. They may be doing like, after a whole day's work, they have to come back and they have to serve. That is the concept in South Asia. You have to heat the food and serve the family. But here I must say that we are lucky to have so much of help around in Kuwait. Yes. What a blessing it is, compared to the West. And of course, back home in India as well. So, but yes, my husband has been a big support as well. And though he has complained, and I won't deny that, he still goes on incessantly complaining, but he still goes on doing it, So that's okay.
Which is good.
Yes, which is good.
I'd like us to mention, because we've mentioned your different shows, but where can people actually find them for those who already don't know, which I believe are only a few.
Okay, thank you for saying that.
But so Thursday Kashta is a podcast.
It is a podcast. It's on my Facebook page. There is a page called Thursday Kashta on Facebook, and there is the link can be found on my Instagram as well, because there's that link tree. I'm still, the relevant thing that you said, I'm still trying to upgrade myself.
Yes, it's a constant
struggle. It's a struggle.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So and the Sadaaqa is on Facebook and on YouTube, and Sadaaqa is on my personal page, on my professional page, which is Chaitali B. And it's on YouTube. And again, you can find the link on the Instagram link tree. And I'm trying to get into Snapchat and TikTok. I haven't been able to do it yet, but it's quite a lot to.
You might have to find someone from a different generation to help out.
I know with that, right?
This is a full-time job.
It is a full-time job. My God, Instagram was like, I was terrified of Instagram. The first, and I attended a symposium. Dr. Anud Al-Sharik, a women's activist, and she invited me. Digital strategy in media and in branding or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, look at these women. And I said, I think I'm much older than you guys. And I'm still struggling. I mean, every day, for example, how do you balance? I want to tell my story, but I shouldn't tell. I cannot have a story which is like more than 10. What was it? 4 minutes, or it has to be within like 10 seconds or something like as ridiculous as that. How do I do that? I mean, come on. I mean, I have to justify the subject, right? So finding that balance is yes.
Can you share some of your future plans with us?
Well, I said I'm the retirement plan is there. I mean, that's. I hope that doesn't happen in a long time. But I want to. The book that you mentioned, we mentioned, Daughters of Kuwait. I am working on a book now, and which I'm hoping to finish by January. It is Sadaaqa, Conversations and Reflections on India-Kuwait Friendship. It's a comparatively an easier book because it is on the interviews that I've done, not so far, but on the first 2 seasons. But it still took me such a long time because, the time, it's a problem. Yeah.
We need more hours.
We do. And I think I've said this to a lot of people. I don't sleep long. I sleep maybe 4, 5 to 6 hours a day on an average. And sometimes I wonder if I had more time, I would have done more work.
Would be able to do more. But there's already so much.
I know. Yeah.
Our short time has passed very quickly.
Really? I think I must have bored your listeners. I go on like endlessly talking. Yeah.
We've mentioned so many of different things you're doing and so many of lovely things you're doing. And there's something for everyone.
Okay.
There's something for people who have hoped for a Hindi radio show. There are beautiful podcasts. There are stories behind everything, actually. Yeah. And what is left to us if not stories to inspire us?
Right. Absolutely.
It's been very inspirational for me today, Chaitali, and always a pleasure.
It's an honor, Ksenia. Thank you so much for inviting me on this particular podcast.
Thank you for coming, and I hope we get to do something together soon. Absolutely. In a different field
in
as
a different
well.
way, yes.
Thank you. Thank you again.